Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahavirya Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishadahai. Aum Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste. So I'm very happy to share with you the results of the research based on the insight I had just a couple of days ago and expressed in this video about the role of superimposition, Adhaya, in the Vedānta-sūtra and the Upanishads, which means the concept goes all the way back to the original Vedas. So this is a very important breakthrough, and it has meant a significant advance in my practice, meditation, and realization of Brahman. And I hope it will do the same for you. So, to keep this video from getting way too long, we already discussed Adhaya in the introduction to Shankaracharya's Bhāsya, or commentary on Vedānta-sūtra, in this video. And now, I want to go forward to the beginning of the second Pāda of the first chapter. First chapter of Vedānta-sūtra is called Samanvāyādhyāya. That means, Samanvaya means reconciliation or harmonization of views. So in the end of the first Pāda, the entire second and third Pāda, different terms from the Upanishads are brought up and shown to actually refer to Brahman. And we're going to give many examples later on, and there's even a PDF you can download with all this material, and the link is in the video description. So, the story really begins in the Upanishads, in the Chhandogya Upaniṣad. Chhandogya deals with various forms of worship of Brahman through different means and symbols. So, as a way to open up this topic, I want to read an excerpt edited for clarity from Shankaracharya's introduction to his commentary on Chhandogya Upaniṣad. Though this treatise deals mainly with the science of non-duality, yet herein are described several forms of meditation and worship, which are conducive to several desirable ends. Because these forms of meditation and worship bring about results nearly as good as liberation, and appertain to slightly modified forms of the one pure Brahman, which have been spoken of as consisting of the mind, having the life breath for its body, and so forth. All this meditation and worship brings about the fulfillment of actions, and is related to the auxiliaries of those actions. There is a similarity also between the meditations and the cognition of the One, in that both are esoteric in character and both fall within the purview of the mind. Just as the cognition of one without a second is a function of the mind, so also are the other forms of meditation and worship. So you see, we're in the deep end of the pool here, and there's a couple of things I have to explain. The different forms of meditation and worship given in Chhandogyopanişad are symbolic or metaphorical meditations on Brahman. Realization of Brahman is the stated end and goal of these meditations. Yet, they seem to refer to Brahman, or a manifestation of Brahman with qualities. So in other words, we're not talking about direct realization of Nirguna Brahman, but indirect approach and final realization of Saguna Brahman, or Brahman with qualities. And he says they bring about results nearly as good as liberation. Well, what could that be? It means entry into the pure creation. We discussed this in detail in the series on Lakshmi Tantra, that the pure creation is created before the gross creation, or the impure creation, and it consists of worlds beyond heaven, which are absolutely pure, sinless, and in which all the inhabitants are fully cognizant and free from any sort of impurity. So this is actually the best place to realize Brahman, Nirguna Brahman. Promotion to the pure creation is just as good as liberation because it leads to liberation in a very short time. These meditations appertain to modified conceptions of Brahman. Saguna Brahman, Brahman with qualities, Brahman that appears to act as the creator, maintainer, and destroyer of the world, and so on. So these meditations and forms of worship bring about the fulfillment of actions. What does he mean by that? Karma Khanda. The Vedas are divided into Karma Khanda, which chiefly have to deal with Vedic sacrifice, and Jnana Khanda, which deals with realization of Brahman. So the fulfillment of Karma Khanda, Karma Yoga, and so forth, is realization of at least Saguna Brahman, Brahman with qualities. And it is related to the auxiliaries of action. That means the Vedic mantras, the various forms of sacrifice, fire sacrifice, and so on, the Vedic hymns, and especially the chanting of Aum, the Pranava, which is in this Upanishad also called Udgita. Ut means the ultimate, and it refers to Nirguna Brahman. And Gita, of course, is chanting or singing. And so the priest that sings the mantras in the Vedic sacrifice is called the Udgita. Udgita. And since all of the mantras he chants begin and end with Aum, Aum is also called Udgita. So the similarity between these meditations and direct cognition of Brahman is that they are metaphorical, they are indirect, they utilize symbols and actions to approach the realization of Brahman. So before I get into why this is necessary, I want to give some examples from the Chhandogya, showing how this works out in actual practice. Shankara continues in his introduction to the 8th discourse of Chhandogya. Brahman is reality, one without a second, and the self is all this, free from all diversities of space, place, time, etc. Yet in the world there are many persons of dull intellect, among whom the conviction that everything real is beset with diversities of space, place, and the rest is so strong that they cannot immediately be turned towards the absolutely real. And yet, the purpose of human life cannot be fulfilled without understanding the real nature of Brahman, the highest. Hence, for the benefit of the duller persons, it is necessary to convey the teaching indirectly. For example, a particular spot within the lotus of the heart is indicated as the abode of the self, Brahman. Though the self in essence is devoid of all qualities, for the benefit of the dull person who has his heart fixed upon the highest being possessing the highest qualities, it is necessary to speak of such qualities belonging to him as a person, with unlimited wealth, power, beauty, knowledge, renunciation, etc. It is not easy to immediately divert the longing for objects of sense gratification. Hence, it is found necessary to enjoin detailed means of accomplishing the end, such as non-violence, vegetarianism, celibacy, etc. There are many persons still beset with diversities such as the goer, the going, and the place to go to. For the benefit of these persons, it has to be pointed out that on death, they pass out of the body by an artery in the head. The teaching on Adhaya, superimposition, is proceeded with for all these purposes. The absolutely true Brahman, being one without a second, is regarded by persons of dull intellect as non-existent. Hence, what the Smriti thinks is, though the teaching now going to be imparted is not the absolutely right one, yet even though such wrong teaching let these ignorant persons be brought onto the right path, we shall gradually lead them up to the knowledge of the absolutely true. So this is the core of the issue. Superimposition is used in the Vedas, Upanishads, and Vedanta, and throughout the Vedic literature in the Puranas, Itihasas, Tantras, and Sri Vidya, and so on, as a means to bring people conditioned by material consciousness gradually to the point of cognizing Nirguna, Brahman without qualities. So it is well understood by the enlightened sages that these teachings are metaphorical. They're not quite true. They're symbolic. They're representative rather than direct. But since this knowledge has to be spread and distributed through language, they are the best that we can do to give people the knowledge they need to at least begin meditation on Brahman, which is otherwise impossible for the conditioned soul. Let me show you some figures that explain how it works. What the Vedas do is called mutual superimposition. Brahman is superimposed on the body in ordinary life, making it appear to have energy and consciousness. At the same time, the body is imposed on Brahman, making it appear to have individuality, action, cause and effect, and so on. Now, in the scriptures, Brahman is superimposed on Aum, as Udgita, which means it acquires qualities of self-realization, enlightenment, bliss, complete freedom, lack of conditioning, and so forth. And at the same time, the Vedic rituals are superimposed on Brahman as making it part of the Vedic liturgy, making it part of the ordinary process of Vedic sacrifice and so on. This leads to sublimation and sublation. Sublimation is the act of heightening, refining, purifying, or freeing something from baser qualities, as the sublimation of the affections, that which has been highly refined or purified, hence the highest product of anything. And sublation is when the whole overcomes but preserves what it overcomes. Nothing is lost or destroyed, but raised up and preserved as in a spiral, merging of the smaller into the higher of overcoming, and at the same time preserving. So in Vedānta-sūtra, the first Pāda of the Samanvāyādhyāya, the first chapter, the Sutrakar takes up Upanishadic terms referring to the manifested world, Akasha, space, Prana, life energy, Jyoti, light, and shows that they really refer to Brahman. The second Pāda takes up terms referring to the human body and shows that they refer to Saguna Brahman. The third Pāda similarly refers to Nirguna Brahman, Para-Brahman. And here's a list of the superimpositions in Pāda 1 of Vedānta-sūtra. These will be included in the file for reference. Here's a list of the superimpositions in the second Pāda. And finally, the third Pāda. These are all based on the theory of superimposition given in Chhandogyopanişad. In Chhandogyopanişad, there are plenty of superimpositions given. So you see here we have opened up a very broad field of inquiry into the methodology of Vedic religion. Now, what we find in the world today, the degraded and debased religions of Kali Yuga, is a plethora of different sectarian cults, each of which claiming that its deity is alone the ultimate reality. But this is not what the Vedas say. Even though they claim to base their sectarian mood on the Vedic literature, they can only do it by misinterpretation, twisting the meaning of the Vedas and Upanishads. What's really going on is that the Upanishads and Vedanta show numerous forms of worship and meditation that lead indirectly to realization of Brahman. And so you might say, well, what's to stop anybody from just making up their own? You know, what is to stop me from, like my old friend Vishnu Jan used to say, why not just chant Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola? And the key is in the statement by Shankaracharya that these superimpositions have to be related to the forms of the Vedic sacrifice. That means they have to be grounded or rooted in the authentic Vedic literatures. Why is that? Because the Vedas are supernatural in origin. They are spoken or actually self-manifested by the breathing of the Mahapurusha in the beginning of creation. We've gone over this in several recent videos. If this is not accepted, then what is the meaning of the authority of the Vedic literatures? If the Vedic literatures are simply another product of defective human intelligence, they lose their authority, then they lose their absoluteness. So I am, and have been for a long time, firm believer in the description of the origin of the Vedas given in the Vedas themselves. They say the Vedas were self-manifested at the beginning of creation from the breathing of Mahapurusha, Mahavishnu, heard by Lord Brahma, who then meditated and discovered the secret and the power to create the universe. So this is the path to self-sovereignty, meaning breaking out of the restrictions, the upadis, of a limited individual existence and attaining full identification with Nirguna Brahman. And it is also the guide to how the realized sages illuminate humankind with the knowledge of the Vedas by teaching a gradual path, not demanding that people simply jump to the unconditioned, the unknowable, inconceivable Nirguna Brahman, but giving them a gradual step-by-step process by means of which they can slowly decondition themselves from the limitations and permutations of material existence, and in this way reach the highest enlightenment and complete liberation. Aum Tat Sat. Aum Shakti Aum.